Anyone like Mac Jones in Atlanta?
Well, look, Atlanta just been so mediocre regardless of the talent recently. But look, Bijan Robinson in your backfield, Drake London, Kyle Pitts as a tight end. I mean, you got talent there. Stefanski, who I do think is a good coach. I don't think he handles Shedeur well, but I think he's a very good coach. But he hasn't had success, Nick, as a head coach with his quarterbacks. Now, maybe that's because he hasn't had any good ones, I guess. Deshaun is just falling off. Watson, maybe we don't know what Shedeur is. Flacco played pretty well for him. But overall, he hasn't.
I mean, the best of Baker, and then Baker got hurt. Like, he had Baker early, and then Baker got hurt.
Yeah, so I don't love him in Atlanta. I would love him in Minnesota. And even if he starts as a backup to J.J. McCarthy.
No.
And then if he went in there, I think he'd be the backup.
That would be
initially. But McCarthy could either get hurt or just not play well, and then I think Matt could take the job.
KW, do you want this? Would you, if let's say, just for the sake of this discussion, say the Vikings are off the table, and it's, you get to decide. He stays in San Francisco next year and is Brock Purdy's backup, or he goes to Atlanta to be the starter. Just flat, they're like, no, we're trading for you. We like you more than Penix. What, as the America's not just biggest, only Mac Jones supporter.
Not the only Mac Jones supporter. I am not the only Mac Jones supporter.
What would you prefer?
I would prefer if he took another year of tutelage under Kyle Shanahan. Have a 2-year process of getting smarter, getting more confident. I don't know if Brock is a guarantee to play all 17 games in the playoffs, so you might get a few chances there. And as for Atlanta, everybody wants to find the next Sam Darnold. Henry writes about Baker and Geno. Why can't Michael Penix be that? Why can't Michael Penix, who has now a new OC, has a new head coach, has the weapons, is there? Everyone thinks they need to shop around.
He's brittle. That's the big challenge.
If that's what it is, then I don't know if that's solvable. But you've seen flashes from Penix. I saw on Monday night he outplayed Josh Allen. The guy can play. He can throw the ball. Can he stay on the field? I don't know. But if you're looking for a reclamation project, you have one in the building.
Yeah, that's actually a really sharp observation from Wildes. Shout out to Wildes for elevating his game a little bit with that take. There are a few layers to unpack here. First and foremost, let's not make the mistake of lumping Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold all into the same category or tier of quarterback. That's just not accurate. Sam Darnold is a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and he has demonstrated his ability to perform at a high level in multiple different organizations across the league. Truly, he's found success in multiple places, so that comparison doesn't really hold up, but that's kind of a side note in the grand scheme of this discussion. Anyway, as you guys know, I absolutely love talking about the Atlanta Falcons and trying to figure out what their direction is going to be at the most important position in sports. All my videos tend to revolve around the reality that so much of a team's fate is dependent on the quarterback, and this franchise is no exception. I genuinely believe in Kevin Stefanski as a coach. I believe in the talent that exists on that roster and what they're capable of accomplishing with the right leadership under center. I think they could have been significantly better last season if they had managed to find any semblance of consistency at the quarterback position. They just could not sustain any rhythm or reliability. And it still drives me absolutely crazy when I think about it. I am still irritated by it. I am still frustrated by how last season unfolded, because think about how many games they won last year, where, if they had just been even slightly more consistent, they would have been in the playoffs. They would have won the division. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. And Kirk Cousins, for a stretch there, was playing pretty well. I was genuinely impressed with how he was performing early on. But you have to live in the present in this league. You can't dwell in the past. And right now, the available options seem to be Mac Jones, Malik Willis, Tua Tagovailoa, and Michael Penix Jr. I'll be honest, I'm also a big fan of Tua as a player and a person. But when you start talking about brittle and injury-prone, in terms of durability and long-term health, that makes me deeply uncomfortable as a potential solution. That being said, I'm a fan of his not necessarily because I think he's some elite, transcendent quarterback, but because I genuinely want to see someone like Tua succeed and thrive in the NFL despite the challenges he's faced. So we can kind of set Tua aside for the purposes of this discussion because his situation is unique. Now, Mac Jones is an interesting case. I think you'd have to trade for him if you wanted him in Atlanta. I don't know exactly what a team would have to give up to acquire him, what the compensation would look like, but you'd definitely have to part with some draft capital to make that happen. However, if you could get Mac Jones on a relatively inexpensive deal, that changes the calculation significantly. Because the next Sam Darnold is going to command a $100 million contract. Even Baker Mayfield just got a $100 million deal. Geno Smith, I forget the exact numbers off the top of my head, but those aren't insignificant contracts. Those are serious commitments. If you acquire Mac Jones because he hasn't proven himself to be a $100 million quarterback yet, which is kind of interesting when you really think about it, considering the early success he had in his career, I don't think he commands that kind of money on the open market. So if he were a free agent right now, I could see him only getting something like a one-year prove-it deal, or maybe even a contract similar to what Justin Fields got, which ended up being a disaster for the Jets in terms of value. It was great for Justin Fields personally, but it wasn't the right business decision, and Fields hadn't really earned that money based on his performance. But I could see Mac Jones landing in that range. Again, a lot of this is speculative on my part, just trying to project what the market might look like. Maybe something like what Daniel Jones got from the Colts. I think that was around a $15 million contract or something in that ballpark. I could see Mac Jones getting something comparable. And you could make a legitimate argument that you're actually better off with a quarterback of Mac Jones's caliber while paying him $10, $15, or $20 million than you are paying a marginally better quarterback $45 million. Here's an interesting thought experiment for you. I'm not actually directly comparing these quarterbacks head-to-head in terms of who's better than who. I'm not saying one is definitively superior to the other. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Baker Mayfield is better than Mac Jones. Not by a massive margin, but noticeably better. Let's use tiers to frame this. You have elite, you have great, and you have good. Let's just say Baker Mayfield falls into the great category, and Mac Jones falls into the good category. Is there a valid argument that you're better off financially and strategically paying for Mac Jones, who's just good, at $15 million over 2 years, rather than paying Baker Mayfield, who's great, $100 million? Because if you know what you're doing with roster construction, if you have a competent front office and coaching staff, you could do some serious damage building around that quarterback with the extra cap space you've saved. I don't think we, as a football community, have fully fleshed out this concept yet. The only thing we really seem to have internalized is that we want to pay quarterbacks less money. When you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, everyone acknowledges that you're in a great position. When you have to pay your quarterback top dollar, we all know it hurts your ability to build around them. But what we don't fully understand is the specific gap in talent required to make paying a mid-tier quarterback less money actually worth it. At what point on the spectrum of quarterback talent does it become better to get a guy for $15 million even though he's not elite, even though he's not Josh Allen, because you can build such a great roster around him that it doesn't matter? As long as you have the right coach and the right system, you're set. And as long as that quarterback doesn't, I don't want to say choke, but just can't handle the moment in big games like the playoffs, then you've got a winning formula. So it's an interesting and thought-provoking discussion. But I agree with Wilds regarding Michael Penix Jr. Going into last season, I was extremely high on Penix. I loved what I saw from him in 2024, toward the end of his college career and leading up to the draft. I made a whole bunch of videos comparing stats and breaking down his game because I was genuinely, truly impressed with his skill set. However, when you factor in questions about whether he can stay healthy at the NFL level, that's where things get complicated. Yeah, man. I try not to get too deeply involved in those kinds of conversations because trying to predict when someone's going to be healthy, whether they're going to stay healthy, whether they're injury prone or not, it's just incredibly difficult. It's hard to gauge accurately, and that type of conversation will always make me uncomfortable because there's so much uncertainty involved. I'll talk about a player being too slow or not fast enough. I'll talk about not being strong enough. I'll discuss their mentality, their psychology, their work ethic. I'll talk about everything else that goes into evaluating a player. But when it comes to trying to predict whether someone can stay healthy over the course of an NFL season, we can make all the assumptions in the world. But the reality is that we don't know. It would have been the safest bet in the world to assume that Christian McCaffrey wouldn't play a full season this past year. After his injury history, you would have thought, are you kidding me? I don't know if this guy is ever going to be able to walk down the street without being in pain again, let alone carry a full NFL workload. And what happened? He played an entire season and was quite frankly an MVP candidate. He was an absolute workhorse and proved everyone wrong. So I'm just not going to try to guess too hard when it comes to health predictions. There's too much variance and too many factors outside anyone's control. That being said, I do agree with Wilds on the broader point about Penix. And I think also, if you have to choose between Mac Jones, Malik Willis, and other available options, this is where you lean on Kevin Stefanski. You lean on your head coach, you ask him, which quarterback are you most comfortable with? Is it Malik Willis? Is it Mac Jones? What style of quarterback do you believe you can get the best out of? What skill set are you most comfortable designing an offense around? What do you believe you can maximize given your system and philosophy? To me, that's what this decision should be about. When you hire a coach like Kevin Stefanski, you're asking him, what is your vision for the Atlanta Falcons? What is your plan to take us to the next level and finally transform this team into a consistent winner? What does that look like? You are, in many ways, building the team around Kevin Stefanski, at least initially. Obviously, this roster already has a lot of talent in place. But in terms of how you're going to round out the rest of the squad and address the most important position, you have to defer to the expert you just brought in. Whatever the Falcons have been doing at quarterback hasn't been working. They have not found sustained success. So when you hire an offensive-minded head coach who's going to call plays and oversee the offense, you have to trust his judgment. If Mac Jones is the type of quarterback that Stefanski is confident he can maximize and bring the best out of, then let's go. Let's do it. If he says, no, I want Malik Willis, great, let's do that. If he's confident in Michael Penix, fantastic. Let's roll with him. I have to give him time to do what I literally hired him to do. That's how this is supposed to work. And if it doesn't work out, then you figure out why. You troubleshoot. Was it the wrong quarterback decision? Did the coach just make a mistake in his evaluation? Or was it simply not the right coach for the job? You figure that out and move forward. But you have to give the person you just hired, the expert you brought in, the opportunity to do their job. So that's where I land on all of this. But I do think Mac Jones can have a ton of success in the right situation. I think we have to understand, and I'll end here by saying this because it applies to virtually every video I make. Even videos about great quarterbacks, coaching matters so much. Once a quarterback has established that he can function as a legitimate starter, that he can run an offense, that he can make all the throws, that he understands the language, that he puts in the work and isn't a liability, so much of the rest falls on the shoulders of the coach. It just does. So much of the outcome depends on whether the coach can pull the right strings, put the player in positions to succeed, and design a system that maximizes his strengths. And that's what makes this situation so fascinating for the Falcons. They seemingly have multiple paths they can take at the quarterback position. And unfortunately, it's not as simple as just saying Michael Penix is the guy, because he got injured and missed time. His injury history in general complicates things. It's not like he just had a rough season last year, and you're thinking, let's see what he can do with Stefanski. The question is, can he not only be a better quarterback under this new coaching staff, but can he actually stay on the field consistently? That's the double problem they have to solve. They have to answer two questions simultaneously, and that's tough. That's why I can't stick my chest out and confidently say, Michael Penix, you have to push all your chips in with Michael Penix. I did that last season, and I stand by that evaluation based on what I saw. I would love to see Michael Penix with actual stability and competent coaching because I think even last season, he showed us some pretty great moments. Even in the beginning of the year, I was watching and thinking, see, that's what I'm talking about. Especially in that game against the Buccaneers, he won that game. The Falcons lost it, but he was doing everything he could to put them in position to win. I was wildly impressed with that performance. And I think anytime a quarterback can show moments of high-level play despite playing on an inconsistent team with an inconsistent coaching staff, that tells me something. That definitely tells me something about his potential. But honestly, with my chest out, I can't give you a direct answer about how the Falcons should operate here. You know, I finally reached a conclusion about what I thought the Dallas Cowboys should do because I was hemming and hawing about that situation for a while. Do you franchise tag? Do you trade Micah Parsons? What's the right move? And then I had this aha moment where I was like, You keep Parsons, you do this, you do that. I just became very confident for whatever reason in that moment. I was like, yeah, this is how I feel about this situation. It doesn't mean I won't change my mind later, but I landed on a position. With the Falcons, I can say this. If you could get Mac Jones for $10 million, I'd say, yeah, okay, do that. Absolutely. Positively do that. But I don't think that's a realistic scenario. And again, you'll have to trade for Mac Jones, and at that point, I don't know what the compensation looks like. Is it a 5th-round pick? Is it a 3rd? I have no idea. People are talking about Tanner McKee as well. I think the Jets are trying to make a play for Tanner McKee, who's the backup quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles and could be legit. I'm kind of a Tanner McKee truther, honestly. I think he has real potential. So there are options out there. But this is where it pays to have the right offensive coach. The Shane Steichens of the world, the Kevin O'Connells of the world, they know how to see value that others miss. The Shanahans of the world, Shanahan went out and got Sam Darnold. Make no mistake about it. He said, I want this guy to be my backup for Brock Purdy. And that was a real job because Purdy was coming off that weird injury, and they weren't even sure if he'd be ready for the start of the season after they had just gone to the NFC Championship game. Shanahan knew how great that team was, so he wasn't messing around with a mediocre backup. When he decided to bring Sam in, that was a massive vote of confidence. Again, they didn't even know if Purdy would be able to start the season. There were legitimate questions about that. So when you have the right offensive coach, they know how to find value. They know how to look at a limited sample size and say, I know I can win with this guy. Or conversely, this isn't going to work. So it's a tricky situation. The Atlanta Falcons, from a quarterback standpoint, are genuinely in a complicated spot. I don't know what the right answer is. And I feel like I've asked this question a handful of times to Falcons fans, but let me know your thoughts. What do you guys want to do? Mac Jones, Malik Willis, Tanner McKee, Michael Penix? I still haven't gotten a strong sense of what the Falcons fan base wants. What are you all looking for? What path do you want to walk down at the most important position? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get some discussions going. Let's get into some debates. But ultimately, let's just have some fun with it. And please do consider subscribing to the channel. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love seeing you be a part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.